the journalist Louise McLoughlin, who is herself a donor-conceived person, has covered these stories for her podcast called You Look Like Me. Louise, who's a former CNN colleague, in fact, joins us now. Thanks for joining us, Louise. If I could first ask just about your story, because you've been so brave, talking about your personal struggle to find your donor father. I don't know how to describe him, but just explain that journey, first of all.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I was 13, I was told I was donor conceived. I had no idea that the term donor conceived even existed, let alone that it was something that applied to me. I was conceived in the UK back when there was the legislation basically said that all donations were anonymous. So I basically had no way of tracking down the man who had donated sperm to conceive me. So I had no idea who my biological father was. The years went by and DNA testing became more commonplace. I put myself on every DNA testing site out there. I got no matches for a decade and a half. And then finally, when lockdown happened, I started to make a podcast about my experience because I realized that the way donor conceived issues were being covered in the media maybe wasn't reflective of the personal stories at the heart of them. It was a subject, there was a lot of secrecy still around it. So I decided to make a podcast platforming donor conceived voices around the world. As I made that by chance, as I say, I'd been sitting on these DNA sites. I got a match that enabled me to track down my biological father. And over the course of the first season, I was able to track him down. I recorded our first meeting. I recorded our first phone call. We're now on season 3, and I've spent all of that time, as you say, that you mentioned an investigation in the UK. There's a lot of issues in this industry, and I've spent these seasons platforming these different stories around the world.
Just briefly, what was that moment like when you met him, and are you, do you respect the fact that he did take that time?
Yeah, it was, it's really hard to put into words. So I would encourage everyone to listen to the podcast where you can listen to it almost in real time. But I called him when he was on a beach in Greece. He knew he donated, obviously, but I don't think he ever thought about the possibility that he could be contacted. I think this is something that we see with a lot of donors across the board, especially people who have donated historically. In a lot of countries, you can still donate anonymously. So I think people go into this knowing that, yes, they're donating. Yes, they have the potential to create, dozens of offspring, but they often don't really think about the fact that they could get that call one day. I was really lucky with him that he was surprised, but he was very open to being contacted. I've met him many times since with a few of the half siblings that I've discovered along the way. And we are, we're forming a relationship. But I've interviewed a lot of people on the podcast who have reached out to people, again, who donated thinking that they would be anonymous forever. And they've been met with, they've been iced out, they've been ignored. Some of them have been met with restraining orders. I've interviewed people who have reached out, who finally identified who their sperm donor was, for example, and reached out only to find out that that person passed away 2 years before. So that's why I'm quite strong on the fact that I think donor conceived people do deserve the right to know as early as possible, because going through all of that, tracking someone down only to find out you'll never meet them, it's quite an emotionally turbulent journey.
Yeah, I think we all have a right, don't we? It's like a human right to know who your parents are. I could ask you questions all night on this, Louise, but I encourage everyone to listen to the podcast because it's a quite incredible story and you're really exposing a massively broken system.